Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to look at our first weekly metagame breakdown for the standard best of one format. We have rotation that happened, we have Edge of Eternities coming in, we're on spacecrafts, we're potentially stationing, but we're going to take a look at what's working so far after just under a week of games played. We had a ladder reset as well, so there's a lot of kind of concurrent things going on. So we're going to get the data from UntappedGG. What you see on the screen, companion tool that tracks user win rates, gives us a whole bunch of cool stats. If you want to use Untapped, link is in the video description. I'll paste and timestamp all these deck lists. I'm also going to kind of comment on some decks that aren't doing well, because usually after every one of these videos I get, what about X or Y or Z? So we'll show some win rates like, is it Cauldron is not doing well in best of one, but does very well in best of three, as an example. Same with mono white tokens. It'll be towards the end of the video. So before you ask about a specific deck, just recommend checking towards the end of the video. And then feel free afterwards, ask any questions you'd like. Happy to answer it in that regard. So meta early on, what are we looking at? So we have Jeskai Control as the most played. Now, notably, this is more, it's classifying the Jeskai Synth deck, the artifact deck, as Control. So it could be kind of a mix there, but that's what we're seeing as kind of the more prominent deck. We have Mono Green and more recently Gruul Landfall as 12%. Mono white life gain 8.6. It's the same deck as pre-rotation. Nothing's changed. It's very mid in terms of win rates. We're not going to cover it today. It's not that exciting. It's like 54% win rate overall. So could win, could do. We have updates on mono red. We have the Orzhov Sacrifice deck. We have mill decks and Esper, demons, and then Azorius Control kind of wrapping it up. So we'll jump into it. We're going to look Platinum to Mythic because the ladder just reset. 200,000 games played. Now, notably, we're going to get a little bit of noise from the day of rotation. And then next week, it'll be a full kind of ladder reset as well as solely post-rotation. So I just kind of cleaned out some of that stuff. Highest win rate deck is actually Temur Battlecrier. And one user, Toasted Waffles, got to number 7 and eventually number 5 Mythic with it. So probably a good chunk of games are contributed by them. So 60, just a shade under 69. We'll give Toasted Waffles the 69. Nice in chats. So this deck here is leveraging Temur Battlecrier. So this is a Temur, so green, blue, red, 4/3 creature that makes it so your subsequent cards that you cast for the turn cost 1 less for each creature with power 4 or greater. So you can kind of combine it with things like Outcaster Trailblazer, which draws you cards, Lumbering Worldwagon. You have the Sure Shot here, the Cactus Sure Shot that gives your other creatures with power 4 or greater trample and haste for the turn. And you effectively make it so you can cast Roaming Thrones for effectively free. Same with Anti-Causal Vestige. The warp cost also gets reduced here. I realize kind of in the way here. So you can kind of cast this for free. And with the Roaming Throne, you either name Dragon, which gives you multiple instances of Dragonhawk's trigger, and then you just ping them to death with all the cards you exile. Same with giving it haste, you get the attack trigger as well. Or you can name Druid or Human, whichever you'd like, and then draw a bunch of cards off the Trailblazer. There's also this combo here with Devastating Onslaught. So this Battlecrier reduces the cost of any card you cast. So any of the X's, so for every 2 creatures you have with 4 power, you get 1 free copy with the Devastating Onslaught. So you could just make a whole bunch of copies of Dragonhawk, they'll legend rule themselves, but whatever, you get the value. You can make a bunch of Roaming Thrones, you can make Anti-Causal Vestige, whatever you want. They get haste, and it's just kind of an alpha strength kind of situation. Llanowar Elf helps you ramp into like Lumbering Worldwagon. Esper Origin kind of stitches your deck together, sets you up, and then gives you some card advantage out of the graveyard as well as some life gain, and then a Braid and Torch as removal. Gruul Landfall, 66%. So this is an update on the mono green landfall kind of Tifa deck. So this deck cares about putting lands into play to double up power, whether it be Tifa or Mossborn Hydra. Same with the little baby Chocobo. And you just kind of play these fetch lands, Evolving Wilds, Fable Passage, Escape Tunnel, get extra triggers. The green here, or the red, is coming from World Soul's Rage, so it gives you an alternate kind of win condition. So if they're bringing in just like, I'm playing removal that deck, well, you can just fireball your opponent and then bring in a whole bunch of extra lands. Plays really cool because then you get all these land triggers again if you have one of these creatures out. And you also have Ice Till Explorer, which lets you basically rebuy these fetch lands from your graveyard, so it's kind of pseudo ramp. In the best of 3 version of this deck, it actually plays blue, like a 1 island, and then you go to Dragon Back Assault. So you could kind of pivot your game plan and play kind of an enchantment-focused token, more mid-rangey version of Landfall. We have Azorius Control, 65%. So the big card they're adding in here is Consult the Stars. So this card here is basically like Baby Memory Deluge at home. You can play it on 2 for some value, and then for 4, it lets you dig so deep, especially in the late game, where you can have, say, 7, 8, 9, 10 lands. It'll dig you, basically find you whatever answer you want. I was watching Miss Min play this in Historic and like a Dimir deck, and it was kind of crazy value. They just kind of chain each other together. You also have Seam Rip as a nice 1 mana removal spell, deals with any non-land permanent mana value 2 or less. So we have 3 steps, kind of your regular package, stock up, bunch of removal, no temporary lockdown. There's the new artifact version, but it's a little bit more narrow. So we're seeing Day of Judgment and Ultima be played instead. Win conditions, Meringue River Region and Overlord of the Mistmoors, 1 Bazen here, and then your Restless Anchorage and Fountain Port. All right, so we got Jeskai Control, really blue-white synth with Fire Crystal. So you're just very seldomly actually going to cast Fire Crystal. Fire Crystal's in here because it's a target for Repurposing Bay to kind of birthing pod into. But the deck's built around Simulacrum Synthesizer. So enters, you scry 2. And then whenever an artifact with mana value 3 or more enters, you get to create a Construct, a artifact creature that's power and toughness are equal to the number of artifacts you control. So with the deck itself, you're basically using United Battlefront to collect a company into these artifacts. We see the new version of Temporary Lockdown, Pinnacle Star Cage, 3 mana, enters, exile artifacts and creatures with mana value 2 or less till leaves the battlefield. And then this one has an added bonus of 8 mana. Put each card exiled with this artifact into its owner's graveyard. Then you create a 2/2 colorless robot for each. So it's kind of a late game win condition if need be. We also see kind of a limited all-star Cryogen Relic. This card was a beast in the early access. So when it enters or leaves, you draw a card. So comes in, you draw a card. If you sack it to like Repurposing Bay, you get it to draw a card, and then itself can be sacked for 2 mana, and you put a stun counter on target creature. So kind of slows down your opponent. Spring-loaded Saw Blades is removal. Clayfire Brick helps you find basics. And then just kind of your Pearliest Snare is removal in there. The Fire Crystal gives haste to your synth tokens. We see 2 of the station or planet lines. I can see a Deja being reasonable here when set Bassadin. So because you're making this synth tokens, it's pretty easy to crew it. And this one wasn't too bad. I had it in my sealed pool for pre-release. For 4 mana, you get to create a copy of target artifact or enchantment, except it's legendary. You can only activate a sorcery. So you can either have it become extra copies of removal, you can have it become extra copies of the synth as well. I don't know necessarily. I feel like this one's more win more. It's basically Tolarian Academy when you get it going. You add blue mana for each artifact you control, but you're pretty much topping out at like 3 or 4. You don't have like mana sinks per se. So I think this one's kind of just a bad tap land more often than not in the deck. I'd probably just rather play like the full Mistrise Village. Seems like it would be an easy addition to the deck instead of starting town as well. That would be kind of my decision. All right, we got Sephiroth Sack. So black-white, you have Sephiroth, kind of your ultimate form of Blood Artist. Enters or attacks, you draw a card. And then whenever another creature dies, opponent loses a life, you gain a life. It's a 4th time triggering. You flip Sephiroth, they get an emblem of the Blood Artist effect, and you have a 5/5 flyer. So this is a race pass version, so it cares about your creatures dying, and then you bring them all back to get value. The big card that came in here is Umbral Caller Zealot. 2 mana, 3/2, unconditional sack outlet. Can do it as many times as you want, whenever you want. Sacrifice another creature or artifact. Surveil 1, so it kind of helps enable your combo by putting cards into your graveyard and then cleaning up the top of your library. We also have Servondim Sunstar Exemplar. 2 mana, 2/2, Vigilance Menace. Whenever another creature control dies, you put a counter on it, you gain a life. And then when it dies or put into exile, if it's 4 or more power, you destroy up to 1 target online permanent. So gets big, and then on the way out, it lets your opponent know, I didn't forget about this extra 1 removal. You have Bartholomew as your 5th sack outlet, Zahur as another sack outlet, and then Voice Victory, Blood Witch, kind of just a bunch of fodder. We also see one of the planets, the Susur Secundi Void Altar. Basically, once you get it stationed, you could 2 mana and 2 life. You sack a creature, draw cards equal to the power of that creature. Sorcery speed, so you can't kind of do it in response to removal. All right, we have mono black demons. So this deck here, 60%, no shield druids anymore, but we have kind of the old package of Unholy Annex, Bloodletter, Unstoppable Slasher kind of combo. We see 2 Arc Enemy Charms, 3 mana black, just flexible card. It's exile creature or planeswalker, raise dead 2 creatures or planeswalkers from your graveyard to your hand, or you get to put 2 counters on a creature you control, gains lifelink on the turn. So it can be an instant surprise kind of, I saved my creature. Cecil, so no cut down notably. You can play Tragic Trajectory if you want some more 1 mana removal. The curve here is quite significant in terms of 2 drops. Things like Gatekeeper Malik here probably does not need it. I'd probably play Tragic Trajectory in there, in that slot. You have Deep Cavern Bat for hand hate. Demon Wall works with the Unholy Annex. Feed the Swarm, another card, probably could be better removal. Nowhere to Run, Shoot the Sheriff as you go for the Throat package, and then Timeline Color. Just a recursive kind of threat that could keep coming back from your graveyard for its warp effect. I've never seen Drix as a creature type. Don't even know where to start there. Boros Burn, 59%, just a shade under 60. So basic mono red deck, more burn focused than like the most package of past. Your Bolt Waves, Burst Lightning, Boros Charms, Lightning Helix. So just ways to kind of push through a bunch of damage. Screaming Nemesis, and then Nova Hellkite as you see 5 mana, you're like, that's a lot, but really in this deck you're probably going to just be playing it for its warp cost. Think of it as 3 mana, burst of 4 damage to your opponent, that if you do flood, you have it kind of in exile on on Space Adventure, and can incidentally kill some creatures with just the 1 damage there. We're seeing Grease Wrench Goblin being played in lieu of Monastery Swiftspear, just a 1 mana 2 power that has a mana sync ability, and then Opera Love Song as some card advantage for the deck. Esper Mill, 59%, so kind of few ways to mill here. Singularity Rupture, 6 mana sweeper, destroy all creatures, and then your opponent mills half their library. You have Space-Time Anomaly, 4 mana, target player mills cards equal to your life total. I think this one's probably a little bit win more. You're generally not gaining life in this deck beyond Authority of the Consuls and a couple Bezas. You are control, so your life should be a resource in this case. I think the Rupture is fine, and then you just kind of, because this mills half, and then you could just exhaust this, and then they lose the game. You also have like Jador is another way to mill. I think this one's probably just win more. I'd probably play more interaction just to keep you alive. Maybe even another Beza, Overlord of the Mistmoors, stuff like that. Even honestly, just another Consult the Stars probably is a better choice than this. This just doesn't, if my opponent's doing this on turn 4, they're probably dead anyways. But yeah, otherwise it's just kind of blue-white, some splash for black for the Singularity Rupture, and Shoot the Sheriff in the deck itself. We have Naya Yuna. So this deck here is looking to use Yuna Hope Aspire, since that's 57%. So reanimates enchantments from your graveyard. Big ones are obviously Overlord of the Boiler Bridges. The damage that comes in is also life-linked, which is cool. You have Summon Knights Round, Summon Bahamut as top-end threats. The Terra helps mill you. Joshua draws discards. This one's got Dredger's Insight to mill you. FOMO draws discards. Summon Fan Mirror kind of draws you in. So less Overlords in this one, kind of more Final Fantasy focused, but a little bit more early game, which could be reasonable in best of 1. The life gain from the Dredger's Insight could also be beneficial. Get Lost, Torches, and a Braid as cheap removal. Chandra kind of lets you draw a discard, gives you another alternative if your opponent, sometimes in best of 1 people play Rest in Peace, Ghost Vacuum, stuff like that. So it's a way to kind of combat against it. All right, someone brought stock Dimir Midrange. Okay, let me know in the do you like how this displays? I think this is very poor UI. They should just, in these digital versions, just have the like the name island up here. makes it very hard to parse deck lists, especially like, okay, fine, these are island swamps, but for the like Mutavaults or Gemstone Caverns or whatever, it's hard to see what they are. I'm not going to go too deep into this. This is stock Dimir Midrange. The only thing that's changing, we see Duress main, we see Tiny Bones. There's no cut downs here, so a little bit more cheap interaction. More Glut of 2, Phantom Interference really is a 2-drop in this case. Shoot the Sheriff, Nowhere to Run, Bitter Triumph as kind of the removal package. Azure Beastbinder is a way to kind of lock down stuff, and then full Kaidos, full Enduring Curiosities, 2 Fabloom Tricks, which is usually more for the mirror. Just kind of good tempo element with the deck. Mono white tokens, because people always ask for this one. It's not doing that well, 52%. So Caretaker's Talon, Enduring Innocence draws you a bunch of cards. We see kind of modular cards in battle menu. You can play the White Adventure, I forget its name now, the make a 2/2, and then the 5-drop from Eldraine. It is skipping my mind. But this one makes a 2/2 if needed. It can give a creature toughness, it can destroy a creature, it can gain you life. Exercise main, probably, I can see it good against some decks, but against like mono red or like some of those other decks, it's not going to do much in that case. You could play Seam Rip as another alternative that we saw in some of those other decks, just lowering your curve. Ghost Vacuum is probably not needed in this density without the Omni decks being so present. But make a bunch of tokens, draw a bunch of cards, and then just overwhelm them with like Elspeths, Overlords, stuff like that. I think Sunken Citadel is still legal, if I'm not mistaken. I would have to check where Sunken Citadel's from. It got reprinted as a special guest, but I don't know if it's still legal. Is it Prowess, like I mentioned, not doing too well in best of 1, 51%. It can sometimes struggle against go wide aggro decks. This is a very powerful deck. It's very good in best of 3 just because of consistency sake. This is usually towards the top, if not the top deck in best of 3. And then the last one is Esper Pixie, sub 50% on this one here. Again, another deck that's putting up results in best of 3, but Pixie usually struggles against aggro, which is more prominent in this format. In the post, like the sideboard versions of this deck, you'll see like the 3-mana sweepers, stuff like that to kind of hedge you against these more aggressively slanted decks. So that is it for the week. What are you enjoying most in this standard format? Let me know, and make sure like, comment, subscribe to help support the channel. Catch you next time. Thanks for watching.